So you guys are starting back to school, this coming week?
On Monday.
Okay, so you should all be in a pretty good mood, right? You had a good vacation. So I am a therapist in private practice, and I see people all ages in my practice, from young kids, as young as 4 up until seniors and everybody in between. And I have a lot of students that come in to see me, high school students and college students. And one of the things that I've noticed with high school and college students is they seem to be pretty stressed and oftentimes not very happy. Can anybody relate to that? Like just being in college? And kids that come in, it's pretty amazing to me. They're all taking AP classes in high school. Did anybody here do that? Take AP classes in high school, right? Okay, a few people. And it was pretty stressful, right? Not too bad. It was easy for you. Right? But a lot of the kids are coming in, they're pretty stressed. And what I found is that a lot of them are staying up till like 2 or 3 in the morning, doing their homework and writing their papers, and then getting back to school. And they can do that for a little while, but after a while they come in and they don't seem to be able to handle it too well. So a lot of people are coming into therapy, and what I've noticed over the years, and I went to school about 20 years ago to become a therapist, and is that people are coming in and they're not happy. And therapists are listening to people talk about their problems and what's going on, and all of us are presented with the same challenge. What can we do to help people feel happier? And so I came to see that really as my role. What can I do to help people feel some happiness? So I wrote down a few things and a definition of happiness. So it's more than simply a positive mood. It's a state of well-being that encompasses living a good life with a sense of meaning and deep satisfaction. So this morning when I got some coffee, I picked up this mug, and there's lots of feelings on this mug, right? Some of them are happy, but love, looks like confusion, anger, frustration, feeling spiritual. So in the course of a day, you can probably relate to this. I mean, many of us are feeling a wide variety of emotions in the course of a minute or an hour or in the course of the day or in a week. And it's normal that as humans we're going to experience all kinds of different feelings throughout the course of a moment or a day or an hour. And it's sort of a misnomer that we're going to be happy all the time. So is there anybody in this room that feels happy all the time? Anybody? Oh, good. So welcome to the human race, right? But I think that in our society, we might be oversold on the concept of happiness, right? And we watch TV ads and we see people on different shows and they seem to be happy. And in our culture, happiness is sort of defined as, you really should go to a good school and get a really good job and make lots of money and buy all the good stuff, and then that's what's going to make you happy. And that's what our culture is telling us we're supposed to be doing, but it doesn't really seem to be working. In fact, our culture is one of the most unhappy cultures on the entire planet. We've looked at other cultures around the planet that seem to be happier, and they don't seem to have some of the same values that we do. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But let's talk a little bit about maybe first what makes people unhappy. So we know that there are things that are going on around us that are making us unhappy. And one of them can be early childhood experiences. So we have people that come into therapy and things happened to them when they were kids. Kids that were maybe adopted or in foster care or abused or had early childhood trauma or neglect. And so we see people that come in and what happened to them in childhood can have a negative effect. Other things like trauma. So any of you who have experienced some trauma in your life, or loss, or change, all of these things can affect our happiness for different periods of time, for brief periods of time, or for ongoing periods of time. Loneliness, hard work, working too much, lack of basic needs, ongoing stressors. Some of it can be genetics. So we find that some people seem to be more resilient. They seem to be happier more than other people. Some of us may have inherited brains from our family members where there may be some genetic things going on that may experience mood. Substance use can experience and affect mood. So part of therapy is trying to help people understand what's happening in the brain. So we are all born with survivor brains. We're born with brains that are geared towards survival, and our brains seem to be pendulum going back and forth between two realms. And those two realms, the survivor brain is going back and forth between things that happen to us and worrying about how things are going to happen in the future. So in therapy, we see that. We see people coming in talking about the things that have happened to them and worrying about how things are going to work out in the future. So how many of you ever wake up and worry in the middle of the night, like, how is that going to work out, right? Or you wake up in the morning, you worry, wow, am I going to be able to get a job when I graduate from college? Or how is that paper going to turn out? Or am I going to pass that exam? And those worries are real, but they're there for a reason. They help us survive. So the human survivor brain is in full gear and working a lot. And for some of us, it's working overtime, and it can affect our mood. So for many of us, we're just spending our time, and our thoughts and our emotions are really about what happened, spending time remembering what happened and worrying about how things are going to work out. And it's the challenge for all of us as human beings to try and find ways to be in the moment. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. So most of us are spending our time in that survival response, which is fight, flight, or freeze. So most of us are spending time in these anxiety states where we're anxious and we're in fight or flight mode. And so one of the major causes of depression or unhappiness for many people is ongoing stress. So all of us have stress in our life, right? And we have daily stress, we have big life events that happen, and our inability to manage stressors seems to have a big impact on mood. And so what happens is we're in a constant state of fight or flight, and many of us then go into the third response, which is freeze mode. And freeze mode is when you're overwhelmed by stress, or you're overwhelmed by all the stressors, and you feel worn out about everything that's going on. And that starts to look like depression. So many people that come into therapy, they've had all kinds of terrible things happen. Losses, change, trauma, feeling overwhelmed by daily life events, and they're not feeling good. So that's where therapists come in. So what can we do about it? So the more I've done therapy with people, I feel like I have to offer people tools. What can we do to help people feel better? What can we do to help people feel happier? So there's a whole field of psychology called positive psychology. Are there any psychology majors here today? Anybody? Okay. So there's a whole field called positive psychology, and that's where we try and help people feel happier. And if you'd like to watch a great film on Netflix, there's a great movie, a documentary on human happiness. It's called Happy the Movie. And they look at human happiness, they study human happiness and what makes people happy. And what they determined was that we can influence our happiness levels by up to 50%. So that's pretty cool, right? So regardless of why we're unhappy, or regardless of what happened, or regardless of what's going on, the science has shown that we can actually make ourselves happier. And there's things that we can do. So let's talk about this. So the first thing that's really important for human happiness is sleep. So I bet there's a lot of students here who aren't getting enough sleep, probably during finals, right? So a lot of you are probably staying up late. So what we know from the science is that the human brain and the human body, we need at least 6 hours of sleep a night. So how many of you are getting 6 or more hours of sleep a night? Everybody? Good. Most of you. And how about during like finals week? Probably goes down, right? So what I've found in my practice is a lot of people are coming in, high school students, college students, and they are studying a lot, they're staying up till 2 or 3 in the morning, and then they're getting up at like 6 to go to school, and they're only getting like 3 or 4 hours sleep. So we know that if you're getting less than 6 hours sleep, you're at high risk for depression. So keep that in mind, okay? Sleep is really important for mood, so you want to make sure that you're getting at least 6 hours of sleep a night. The second thing that the human body needs to feel good is activity. So we know from studies of the human race that our ancestors a few generations back were probably walking 10 to 15 miles a day, and they were getting vigorous physical exercise by the work that they were doing, okay? So how many of you are walking 10 or 15 miles a day? None of us probably, right? How many are walking maybe a mile or 2 a day? Anybody? Okay, good, quite a few of you, that's great. So we've got to get up and we've got to get moving. Most of us are pretty sedentary, right? We move from our bed to the chair, we move from our chair to the car, we move from our car to the desk, and many of us aren't moving enough. So what they've found is really what's most beneficial is maybe even only like 15 minutes of intense, brief aerobic exercise is going to help your mood. So if you can get up and get moving and do something really intense and aerobic for just a few minutes, it doesn't have to be going to the gym or walking 5 miles, just get your heart rate up. And what that does is it's going to help offset many of the stress chemicals in the body. How many of you remember the little Pac-Man video game from many years ago, right? So when you get your heart rate up, your brain starts pumping out more of your naturally occurring opiates. And we've seen it under the microscope. Those opiates, those are the endorphins, serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine. They go around and gobble up the stress chemicals in the body. And so when you get some aerobic exercise, you start to feel calmer and you feel happier. So activity is very important. Another thing that we found is drinking water. So how many of you are drinking 8 glasses of water a day or more? Okay, not very many people. So brain dehydration is one of the leading causes of depression. So the brain...
Does tea count as water in tea?
Well, you got to be careful because many of the things that we are drinking are dehydrating, like many of the teas, sodas, coffees, juices, these can be dehydrating. So I drank about 3 of these today, so I've dehydrated myself this much. So I've got to drink 3 additional glasses of water to just break even, okay? So dehydration is a leading cause of depression. So when people come into my office, that's one of the first things I ask them is like, how much water are you drinking? So the brain is an electrical system conducted by water. So for all of the feel-good chemicals to move around in the brain that make us feel calm and happy, it needs to be well hydrated. So if you aren't drinking enough water, then think about your oil and your car engine being low, right? That engine isn't going to run really well. So once we start drinking water and we get hydrated, people start to feel better. They start to get more energy, they start to feel happier, they start to feel less foggy and more focused. So for a lot of people, brain dehydration is a leading cause of depression. So drink more water. Nutrients. I just came from a workshop that was put on by a naturopathic doctor, and she talked about the importance of really what we put in our bodies and how important it is for mood. So what we know now is 95% of serotonin production, which is one of the chemicals in our body that make us feel happy and calm, is produced in the gut. 95% is produced here. So think about what we put in our bodies. First of all, maybe not enough water. Secondly, many of us are starting off our day with something sugary, something artificial, something that has chemicals in it, preservatives, food colorings. All of these things are going to have an impact on mood. So the naturopath said, you've got to start your day off with something animal protein, right? So she said you'd be better off starting off with some chicken or beef or some dairy products to help your blood sugar levels throughout the day, and eating 3 balanced meals, protein at each meal, snacking in between with some nuts, that kind of thing. So what we're putting in our body has an impact on mood too. So think about what you eat throughout the course of the day, right? So if you're eating fast foods full of different things, that's really going to have an impact on mood. So I encourage all of my clients to go to the doctor and get a physical, because much of what happens with mood are some deficiencies in the body. So there are things that we know that impact mood, and those are your B vitamins, your D vitamins, magnesium, different things like that. So I encourage people to get a blood panel and rule out anything that may be going on in the body, okay? Because these things can impact mood. Your thyroid levels, your hormone levels, all of these things can impact mood. So it's good to rule out all of those things and make sure that none of those are impacting. So many people will benefit according to the naturopath, and I encourage you all to talk to your doctors about these things, but make sure that you're getting a good supplement with your B vitamins, with your D vitamins, especially D3. So most of us aren't in the sun anymore. We used to all be out in the sun more, and we were getting plenty of vitamin D from the sun. So a vitamin D deficiency is a leading cause of depression. So many doctors, when you go in to get a physical, you'll have a vitamin D deficiency, and they're encouraging people to supplement. So a vitamin D deficiency can have an impact on mood. So some people are finding success with probiotics. So if 95% of endorphins are generated in the gut, then sometimes probiotics can be helpful for mood as well. So it's really about balance. So think about it. There's 24 hours in a day, right? 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of work, and 8 hours of some leisure activity. So how many of you are doing that, right? Most of us are working too much. We may be working long hours and not sleeping enough and having very little leisure activity. So we found that doing something that you enjoy really helps impact mood. So a few years ago, I decided to take my own advice and that I tell my clients and start pottery. So I've been doing pottery for the past few years, and what I've noticed while I'm doing pottery and working with my hands is that I feel different, I feel calmer, I feel happier. And so many of us, our ancestors were all doing work with their hands, right? Women were baking bread, cooking, men were building things, working in the earth, right? Farming, these kinds of things. So you might want to consider adding some sort of creative process to your daily life if you can. Find something that you can do working with your hands. So there's a link with movement of hands, doing something creative, and a reduction of depression symptoms and an improvement of mood. And so find something creative to do. Anybody here doing something creative? Or like music, our musicians here today. You're all pretty happy people, right? So playing an instrument is something that you can do creative. Being in nature is really important. So most of us are spending most of our time indoors, and we were never supposed to be spending all of our time indoors outside of light and fresh air. What we found is that people are happier when they're in nature. So they've done control groups of depressed people, and they had one group go walk in a mall, another group go walk outside in nature somewhere, and the people that were out in nature seemed to be happier. So what we've discovered is in dirt, there are molecules that we breathe in and that are absorbed through the skin that actually release endorphins. So people that are digging in the dirt or out in nature seem to be happier. We get a lift in mood from that.
It's a great endorsement for our garden project.
Yes, great. Yes, you'll be happier if you go work in the garden, definitely. And I think of other things that have been helpful for people are volunteering. So a lot of people, my depressed clients that come in, I'll ask them to see if they can go find some volunteer work. So that seems to be something that makes people feel happy. And finding a supportive community seems to help people feel happier. So that's why the people that are here in this church and other communities seem to sense a greater feeling of happiness because they're involved with other people and they find community. Okay, smiling, laughing. So people that are depressed, if we can just get them to smile, even if they don't feel like it, there's something about turning this up that seems to help change mood. And finding a purpose, finding meaning. So many of us are lost. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know where we're going. We don't know why we're here. And finding a purpose, finding a sense of meaning seems to be helpful. Seems to help people feel better. And asking yourself, what makes me happy? So these are big questions. We don't often ask ourselves these questions, but I would encourage you when you leave here today to maybe ask yourself that question and write it down and do a little writing about it. You know, what makes me happy? What do I need to feel happiness, right? Because so many of us just go about our daily lives. We do the things that we're supposed to do or somebody thinks that we should be doing, and we never take the time to ask those big questions, you know. So trust your own inner wisdom. What do I need to be happy? What will make me happy? And another thing that you need to know about unhappiness is that you won't feel this way forever. There's hope that you can change, that things won't always be this way. You won't feel this way forever. That just like this cup, there's many feelings, and we're going to be experiencing all of them. And you won't always feel sad. You will feel happy again. There is some hope that life can go on and things will change. So, in conclusion, feeling the feelings, they won't last. They will change. It's okay to feel whatever you feel. Cry, scream, do whatever you need to do to feel the feelings. We don't have to be afraid of them. Pray, meditate, breathe. So prayer and meditation have been shown to change mood. So that's why people who have spiritual beliefs seem to be happier people, because we've noticed changes in the brain for people who can take the time to pray and meditate. The frontal lobes of the brain light up with our naturally occurring opiates, and we do seem to be happier when we have a practice of faith. So in conclusion, I'd like us to just try a little exercise, because it seems that one of the secrets to happiness is just trying to be in the moment. So when we started off, we talked about how our survivor brains are usually in those two realms, right? Of remembering what happened and worrying about what's going to happen. And because of that, very few of us are in the moment. So it seems that we find most of our happiness about those times when we're in the moment, where we can slow down and just think about what's real and what's good and what's really happening right now in the present moment. So as we close, I'd like everybody to just close your eyes, and let's all just take a couple really deep breaths. And if you can, just breathe down into your belly. Just relax and let go. And we're just feeling the breath. And take a moment to just think about what's good and what's real right now in the present moment. And take a moment just to think about what's really good and what you're grateful for right now, today. So by doing that, you've just changed your brain chemistry, and breathing and relaxing and focusing on what's good and what's real right now, you've all helped yourself hopefully feel a little calmer and a little happier. So thank you very much.
Thank you.